Every December without fail, my family mailed out hundreds of Christmas cards. Perfect lighting, perfect smiles, perfect family. Except I was never in a single one, not once. When I finally worked up the courage to ask my father why, he looked straight at me and said, without hesitation, "Because you don't photograph well with us, Carol." That was his explanation. Then this past November, my mother called with an invitation I never thought I'd hear. They wanted me in the Christmas photo. After a decade and a half of being erased, suddenly I was welcome. I arrived at the studio 30 minutes early. What I overheard behind that door made me turn around and walk out without saying a word. And what I mailed to my grandmother 3 days later? It made my sister call me screaming at 2 o'clock in the morning. Only if this story resonates with you. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. To understand why I did what I did, I need to take you back 15 years. Back to the very first Christmas I was erased from my own family's picture. I was 19 years old that year, a freshman home from college for winter break, still naive enough to believe my family was normal. At breakfast, my mother announced to everyone, "The whole family is going to have a professional photo shoot at Harrison Photo Studio in downtown. So please dress nicely," she said, spreading jam on her toast. I took her at her word. I spent nearly 2 hours choosing a forest green sweater dress. I did my makeup carefully. I even curled my hair, something I almost never bothered with back then. When we arrived at the studio, a photographer with a camera slung around his neck glanced up from his equipment. His forehead creased slightly. "I thought it was just 3 today." My mother smiled. That polished, effortless smile she saves for strangers. "Oh, Carol's just here to watch, right, honey?" I froze in the doorway. I thought we were all getting photographed. My father, Richard Danvers, grabbed my elbow and guided me into the hallway. His grip wasn't painful, but it was firm, intentional. "You don't photograph well with us," he said quietly. "Something about how you look under studio lights. The cards need to be perfect." "But Dad, I don't understand." "You don't need to," he replied, releasing my arm. "Just wait outside." I sat in the lobby for 45 minutes. Through the glass partition, I watched the photographer position my parents and my sister, Emily Danvers. I watched them laugh at his jokes. I watched Emily flip her blonde hair and pose like she'd been doing this her entire life. On my way to the bathroom, I passed a mirror. The studio lights hit my face. I looked fine. More than fine, actually. The green dress made my eyes stand out. My makeup was even. My hair held its curl. There was no lighting problem. There never had been. 3 years later, I graduated with honors in accounting. To achieve that, I had to work 2 jobs simultaneously to buy textbooks that my parents said they couldn't afford. I stayed up late at the library while Emily posted pictures of herself at the beach, a gift from her parents for completing her freshman year of college. The ceremony took place on a bright May morning. I walked across the stage with my head held high, my diploma in hand, 3 years of exhaustion and determination compressed into a single moment. Afterward, I spotted my family in the crowd. My dad already had his phone out. My mom was adjusting Emily's sundress. "Let's get some pictures," my mom said brightly. "Emily, stand over there by the fountain." Emily, 19 years old, fresh off her first year of college. Even the achievements are nothing special. I watched them take photo after photo of my sister. It took almost an hour in total. "Mom?" I held up my diploma. "Could someone maybe—" "Oh, we'll get yours later, Carol," she said without looking at me. "The light is perfect right now for Emily." They never got mine. I asked a stranger to take a single photo of me. She smiled kindly and told me congratulations. That evening, I came home to find a new 8x10 frame on the living room wall. Emily in her sundress, smiling, the fountain sparkling behind her. My diploma was still sitting on the kitchen counter where I'd left it. That December, I saw the Christmas card proof on my mother's desk. The Danvers family. Merry Christmas. Emily stood between my parents, glowing in red. There was no empty space where I should have been. They were positioned perfectly, 3 people forming a complete unit. What I didn't know then was that someone in my family had been sending me something every single year, something I wouldn't discover for another 12. By 28, I'd built a life that no longer depended on my family's approval. I was a senior financial analyst at Morrison and Blake LLP. I had a small apartment with exposed brick that I decorated myself, a savings account that quietly grew month by month. That was around the time I met Michael Reed. It was at a gallery opening. He was there photographing the event. I was there because a coworker had an extra ticket. He had kind eyes, paint-stained fingers, and when he smiled, it reached all the way up. 3 months into dating, Michael asked if he could see photos of my family. I went quiet. "Everyone has family photos, Carol," he said gently, without pushing. "In my family," I replied slowly, "I'm the one who doesn't get to be in them." He didn't ask me to explain. He just reached across the table and held my hand. That night, lying in bed, I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. By accepting my invisibility, I'd helped make it permanent. Every Christmas card sent without me, every family photo where I didn't exist, I was letting them erase me. If I stayed silent forever, I would disappear as the daughter who never was. A few weeks later, Michael and I were walking through the park when he said, almost casually, "I photograph wealthy families sometimes. Corporate clients. Old money." He nudged a pile of leaves with his shoe. "You know what I've noticed?" "What?" "The ones who care the most about looking perfect, they're always hiding something ugly." I thought about the flawless Christmas cards, the matching outfits, the carefully arranged smiles that never included me. What were my parents so desperate to project? And more importantly, who were they performing for? My grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, my mother's mother, had always been kept at a distance. She lived alone in a brownstone in the Hudson Valley, surrounded by books and old photographs. My grandfather had left her well provided for when he passed, very comfortable from what I'd overheard. Growing up, I rarely saw her. My mom always had an excuse. "Grandma's tired. Grandma's not feeling well. Don't bother her." But every year on my birthday, a card arrived in Eleanor's thin, looping handwriting. Every Christmas, a small gift wrapped in brown paper. I would call to thank her, and we'd talk for hours, about books, birds, and the garden she kept. Then, around the time I turned 20, the calls started going to voicemail. My letters went unanswered. My mom said Grandma was overwhelmed and needed space, so I stopped reaching out. It felt like one more quiet rejection. Everything changed because of Aunt Ruth, my mother's younger sister, quieter, kinder, always in the background. We ran into each other at a farmer's market when I was 29. "Your grandmother asks about you all the time," she said, studying a tomato like it held the secrets of the universe. I nearly dropped my coffee. "She does?" "Diane tells her you're too busy," Ruth said carefully, "that you don't want to visit." Her jaw tightened. "But that's not true, is it?" I swallowed. "I thought Grandma didn't want to hear from me." Ruth slowly set the tomato down. "Your mother intercepts things, Carol," she said. "Letters, calls. She's been doing it for years." My stomach dropped. "Your grandmother thinks you abandoned her," Ruth continued gently, "and it broke her heart. She used to say you reminded her of herself, treated like an outsider in her own home." Something had been taken from me. I just didn't understand how much yet. That November, my phone rang on a Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer. "Carol." My mother's voice sounded different, softer than usual. "We're doing Christmas photos next Sunday." I waited for the punchline. "We want you there this year." The words didn't register. 15 years of exclusion. And now this. I kept my voice flat, professional, accountant voice. Facts only. "Grandma Eleanor," my mother said after a pause. "She's not well. She wants to see the whole family together." "Does Grandma want this?" I asked. "Or do you?" Silence stretched between us. "Both," she finally said, clearing her throat. "So, you'll come?" "I need to think about it." "Don't take too long," she replied. "Sunday at 2. Harrison Photo Studio in a downtown." A beat. "Oh." And wear red. That's the theme this year. She hung up before I could say anything. I sat on my couch staring at my phone. 15 years of you don't photograph well. 15 years erased from every holiday, every milestone, every version of our family. And now I mattered, because my grandmother wanted proof. I called Michael and explained everything. I think something's wrong, he said carefully. People don't change that fast without a reason. I should say no, or, he said after a moment, you could say yes, and find out what they're really after. I thought about Ruth's words, about Grandma believing I'd abandoned her, about 15 years of letters and calls that never reached me. I'll go, I decided, but on my terms, meaning I'd get there early, and I'd listen before they knew I was there. The next morning, I called Aunt Ruth. I need to know what's really going on, she sighed heavily. I was wondering when you'd call. Mom invited me to the Christmas photos, I said. First time in 15 years. I know, Ruth replied. A pause. Eleanor's been in hospice care for 2 months. She's reviewing her affairs. Hospice. The word hit like a physical blow. Her will, Ruth continued. She's been asking questions. What kind of questions? Why you're never in any family photos. Why you never visit. Why you never respond to her letters. My grip tightened on the phone. What did my mother tell her? That you're estranged, Ruth said. That you chose to distance yourself. That you don't want to be part of the family. Heat surged up my chest, sharp and bitter. That's a lie. I know, sweetheart, Ruth said quietly. And I think Eleanor is starting to realize that too. She explained the rest. My grandmother's estate was substantial, around $4.2 million. Originally, she planned to divide it between her daughters and grandchildren, but lately she'd been asking pointed questions. She wanted proof that the family was united. Your mother told Eleanor you'd be in this year's Christmas photo, Ruth said. She promised. That's the only reason Eleanor hasn't changed anything yet. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. They didn't want me in the photo because they missed me. They didn't want me because they finally valued me. They needed me as evidence. Proof of a loving family that had never existed. A prop in a performance for a dying woman. Ruth, I said, my voice steady despite the ground shifting beneath me. They're not getting away with this. What are you going to do? Tell Grandma the truth. That night, Michael and I sat at my kitchen table. You're really going through with this? He asked, not judging, just making sure. I want to hear them say it themselves, I said. Then I pulled a cardboard box from under my bed. And then I'm going to show Grandma what they've been hiding. Michael opened the box, his eyebrows lifted. Inside were 15 years of Christmas cards, every single one my family had sent out since I was 19. Where did you get all of these? Neighbors, Dad's coworkers, Mom's book club friends, anyone on their mailing list who'd give me a copy. I spread them across the table. Year after year, the same pattern. My mom, my dad, Emily, smiling, perfect, complete. No me, not once. Why did you keep them? Michael asked, picking up a card from 2019. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thought maybe one day someone would need to see them, someone who mattered. I gathered the cards carefully. I'm putting them into an album, alongside photos of me from each of those years, side by side, proof of what they did. Michael nodded. And you'll send it to Eleanor after Sunday. After I hear what they really think of me. He reached across the table. I'll drive you. I'll wait in the parking lot, just in case. Thank you. He met my eyes. Whatever happens, you're doing the right thing. She deserves to know. Sunday arrived faster than I expected. I put on the red dress my mother had specified, did my makeup, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked fine. Better than fine. I always had. Let me pause here and ask you something. If you were in my place, finally invited after 15 years of exclusion, would you have gone to that photo shoot? Or would you have walked away? Comment below. Go or stay away. And it changed everything. 2 days before the photo shoot, Aunt Ruth asked me to meet her for coffee. She arrived carrying a thick manila envelope bulging with papers. "I've been holding on to these for a long time," Ruth said quietly as she slid it across the table. "I should have given them to you years ago." I opened it carefully. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me, written in my grandmother Eleanor Whitmore's elegant handwriting. My hands began to shake as I unfolded the first one. December 2009. My dearest Carol, I haven't heard from you since your birthday. I hope you received the sweater I sent, the blue one that matches your eyes. Your mother says you've been busy with college. I understand. But please, when you have a moment, call your grandmother. I miss hearing your voice. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. I read another, and another. 15 years of letters I had never received. Birthday cards, Christmas notes, invitations to visit, questions about my life, my work, my dreams, my plans. Threaded through all of them was the same confusion, the same hurt. A grandmother who couldn't understand why her granddaughter had stopped responding. Then one from 2018. "Carol, if I've done something to offend you, please tell me. I've written so many times. I don't understand your silence. Have I lost you?" Tears blurred my vision. She thought I'd abandoned her. My voice broke. Diane intercepted everything. Ruth's expression tightened with old, familiar anger. Incoming and outgoing, for 15 years. Diane managed the household mail while Eleanor's eyesight worsened. "Why?" "Control," she said flatly. "Image, making sure Eleanor only saw the family Diane wanted her to see." I clutched the letters to my chest. These weren't just papers, they were proof. Evidence of a relationship that had been deliberately destroyed. "Grandma needs to see these," I said. "Yes," Ruth nodded. "She does." Saturday night, the eve of the photo shoot, Michael and I worked until midnight assembling the album. Each page told a year of the story. On the left, that year's Danvers family Christmas card. My parents and Emily, smiling, perfect, no space for a fourth. On the right, a photo of me from the same year. 19-year-old me in my dorm room, holding a textbook, unaware I'd just been erased. 22-year-old me at my graduation, diploma in hand, alone. 25-year-old me at my first real job, standing in front of my cubicle. Year after year, their curated perfection placed beside my solitary reality. "How long have you been planning this?" Michael asked as he carefully aligned a photo on the page. "I didn't plan it," I said, smoothing down a corner. "I just kept things. Evidence. I didn't know why. Maybe instinct." I added the final card, last year's, my family in matching green sweaters. Maybe I always knew that someday, I'd need proof that I existed. We included copies of Grandma's letters too. The ones she sent, but I never received. Physical evidence of 15 years of deception. At the front of the album, I placed a letter I'd written myself. "Grandma, for 15 years, I thought you had forgotten me. I thought you didn't want to hear from me anymore. I was wrong. What you're about to see is the truth that was hidden from both of us. Not to hurt anyone, but because you deserve to know what really happened. I was never the one who walked away. I've always loved you, your granddaughter, Carol." Michael closed the album gently. "This isn't revenge," he said. "No." I traced my finger along the cover. "This is just finally being seen." Tomorrow, I would hear the truth from their own mouths. Then Grandma would see everything. Sunday, 1:30 p.m. 30 minutes early. Michael dropped me off a block from Harrison Photo Studio. "Text me if you need anything." "I will." The studio sat in an upscale strip mall, all exposed brick and trendy lighting. The front door was locked. They weren't officially open on Sundays, but I remembered from childhood that there was a side entrance for clients. I slipped inside quietly. The lobby was empty. Soft Christmas music drifted from hidden speakers. Through a glass partition, I could see the main studio being prepared. Red backdrop, artificial snow, props placed with precision. Voices carried from the client waiting room. I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, which stood slightly ajar. My mother's voice. Emily's. She's actually coming? Emily sounded incredulous. She confirmed yesterday, my mom replied, clipped and businesslike. She'll be here at 2. A sharp sigh. I can't believe we have to do this. 15 years of perfect cards, and now we have to include her. My heart slammed against my ribs. It's one photo shoot, Emily. My mom lowered her voice. I strained to hear. 1 hour of pretending we're a happy family. Then things go back to normal. But why does Eleanor even care? Emily scoffed. She's barely conscious half the time. She's conscious enough to call her lawyer. Silence. Then my father's voice, calm and calculating, the tone he used for business deals. The will is $4.2 million, Emily. $4.2 million. We play nice for one afternoon. Eleanor signs off, and we're set. I stopped breathing. So Carol's just what? Emily asked. A prop? My mother laughed softly. She's always been a prop, sweetie. She just never knew it. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. I should have walked away then, but I needed to hear everything. Run me through it again, my father said evenly. Eleanor's been asking why Carol is never in our photos, my mother said, her tone rehearsed. I told her Carol's been busy with work, that she's private, that she doesn't like cameras. She paused. That worked for a while, but lately she's been pushing. She told the lawyer she won't finalize anything until she sees proof that we're all united. Emily snorted. United? Right. Which is why we do the photo, my dad continued. We take a nice family picture, all 4 of us. We send it to Eleanor. She sees her granddaughter happy with us, signs the papers, everyone wins. And then? Emily asked. Then Carol goes back to wherever she goes, my dad said calmly. We don't see her again until the next time we need her. Something cold settled in my chest. Not surprise, I'd suspected as much, but hearing it said out loud, so casually, was different. I already had the printer mock up the cards, my mother added as her heels clicked across the floor. See? There's a blank space where Carol will stand. 1 click, done. She disappears again. I leaned closer to the door. My mother was holding up a proof card. 3 smiling Danvers, with an empty space on the left, like a puzzle piece borrowed only when necessary. She doesn't suspect anything? My dad asked. Carol? My mother laughed dismissively. She's been begging to be included for years. She's probably thrilled we finally asked. Emily giggled. Desperate. I stepped back from the door. They thought I was desperate. They thought I was pathetic. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I pushed the door open. 3 heads snapped toward me. For a moment, no one moved. My mother's hand froze mid-gesture, still holding the mock-up card. My dad's face went blank. Emily's mouth fell open. Carol? My mother recovered first, her smile sliding into place like a mask. You're early. We weren't expecting— I know, I said calmly. I heard everything. The mask flickered. Honey, whatever you think you heard— Prop. I raised a finger. $4.2 million. Another finger. I disappear again. A third. Desperate. Emily went pale. Now, Carol, my dad stepped forward. Let's not overreact. I'm not overreacting, I said, meeting his eyes. I'm finally reacting appropriately. You're misunderstanding the situation, my mother said sharply. We wanted you here. We've always wanted you here. Really? I gestured to the card in her hand. Is that why you designed it with a blank space so you could insert and delete me whenever it was convenient? No one answered. 15 years, I continued evenly. 15 years of being erased. And the only reason you want me now is to trick a dying woman into believing you're a real family. That's not— Emily started. I'm done. I turned toward the door. Don't contact me again. Carol, my mother's voice sharpened. If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. I paused at the threshold and looked over my shoulder. Mom, I said quietly, I was never really allowed inside in the first place. I walked out into the December sunlight. Michael was waiting by the curb. One look at my face, and he opened the passenger door without a word. "Drive," I said. "We have a package to send." We drove straight to Aunt Ruth's house. She was standing on the porch, as if she'd known I was coming. "I'm guessing the photo shoot didn't happen," Ruth said as I stepped out of the car. "It did," I replied. "Just not the way they planned." I reached into the back seat and lifted the album. It felt heavier now, 15 years of evidence bound in leather. "I need to get this to Grandma," I said, holding it out. "But my mom will intercept anything I send directly." Ruth nodded slowly. "I visit Eleanor every Tuesday and Thursday. I can bring it myself." "You'd do that?" Her eyes shone. "I've watched my sister erase you for 15 years. I should have done something sooner." She took the album carefully. "Let me make this right." Michael helped add the final touches. Copies of Grandma's intercepted letters, photos laid out in order, the timeline clear and undeniable. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly as Ruth prepared to leave. "She deserves the truth." I watched Ruth's car disappear down the street. They'd been lying to Eleanor for 15 years. About me, about our family, about everything. "What do you think she'll do?" Michael asked. I didn't know. Part of me hoped she'd understand. Part of me was terrified she'd reject me too, believe my mother over me. But I was done hiding from the truth just because it might hurt. "Whatever she decides," I said, "at least it'll be based on reality, not the fiction my mom created." That night, I barely slept. Somewhere in a hospice facility 3 hours away, my grandmother was about to learn that the granddaughter she thought had abandoned her had been taken from her instead, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 days passed, the longest 3 days of my life. Tuesday evening, my phone rang. "Aunt Ruth?" "She saw it," Ruth said, her voice thick with emotion. "She saw everything." I gripped the counter to steady myself. "And?" "She cried, Carol, for over an hour." My heart dropped. "Oh no, I shouldn't have—" "No," Ruth interrupted. "Not sad tears, angry tears, furious tears." I exhaled slowly. "She kept saying, 'My baby, they kept my baby from me,' over and over." Ruth sniffled. "She couldn't believe Diane would do this to her own daughter." Does she believe me?" "Honey, she has 15 years of letters she wrote to you, in her own handwriting. Letters you never answered because you never received them. There's no denying the evidence." Relief washed over me so hard my knees nearly gave out. "She called Diane," Ruth continued, 20 minutes after I left. "I don't know what was said, but Diane called me screaming afterward. Something about you destroying the family." "What's Grandma going to do?" There was a pause. "She called her lawyer this morning. She's making changes." "Ruth, I didn't do this for money." "She knows," Ruth said gently. "That's exactly why she's doing it." Her voice softened. She said, "Carol wasn't trying to get anything. She was just trying to be seen, and I failed to see her for 15 years. Tears slipped down my cheeks. "She wants to see you," Ruth added quietly, "before she tells the rest of the family what she's decided." "When?" "Thursday. Can you come?" I looked at Michael, watching me from across the room. He nodded. "I'll be there." "Good," Ruth said after a pause. "She's been waiting 15 years for you, Carol. Don't make her wait any longer." The hospice facility was quieter than I expected. Soft colors, gentle light, the faint scent of flowers mixed with antiseptic. A nurse led me to room 14. I hesitated at the door. Inside, my grandmother sat in a wheelchair by the window. The album rested open on her lap. Even from the doorway, I could see she'd been studying it. She looked up. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes, still sharp despite everything, traced my face as if she were memorizing it. "Carol," she said softly, "my beautiful girl." I crossed the room in 3 steps and knelt beside her. She reached out with trembling hands and cupped my face. "You didn't abandon me," she said, tears carving paths down her cheeks. "You were kept from me." "I didn't know, Grandma," I whispered. My own tears fell freely. "I thought you didn't want to hear from me." "I know, sweetheart," she said gently. "I know now." She pulled me into an embrace. She smelled like lavender and old books, exactly as I remembered from childhood. We stayed that way for a long time. Finally, she released me and gestured to the album. "I signed new papers this morning. My lawyer was here at 8. "Grandma, you don't have to." She lifted a thin hand. "I'm not doing this because of money. I'm doing this because of truth." She pressed a small envelope into my palm. "I've written letters to everyone, Diane, Richard, Emily, Ruth, explaining what I know now and why I made my decision. What happens when they read them?" She smiled, tired, but resolute. "Then they'll finally understand that you can't build a family on lies, and that I always knew which granddaughter truly loved me." Let me pause here and ask you something. Do you think I did the right thing, sending that album without warning? Or should I have confronted my parents first? Comment below, right or wrong. I genuinely want to know. The call came at 2 a.m. I had just fallen asleep, peaceful for the first time in weeks, when my phone lit up. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I answered on the third ring. "What did you do?" she screamed. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Michael stirred beside me, instantly awake. "Hello to you too, Emily." "Grandma sent letters to all of us," she shouted. "Dad's pacing the living room like a maniac. Mom is crying, actually crying." I sat up slowly, keeping my voice calm. I told Grandma the truth. "The truth?" Emily laughed, sharp and hysterical. "You destroyed us." "You showed her all those cards and letters, everything. We're supposed to be family." "Are we?" I asked quietly. "Because families don't erase each other. Families don't intercept letters for 15 years. Families don't call each other props." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Emily spoke again, her voice breaking. "Grandma cut Mom's share in half, and mine too. She gave most of it to you and Aunt Ruth." "I didn't ask for that." "But you got it anyway," she snapped. "You got exactly what you wanted." "What I wanted," I said slowly, "was for Grandma to know I didn't abandon her. What I wanted was for her to see me, really see me, before she died. The money was never the point." "Easy to say when you're getting it," Emily shot back. I was tired now, tired of explaining, tired of justifying. "I'm not apologizing for telling the truth," I said. "If the truth destroyed something, then it wasn't worth protecting." "You'll regret this." "No," I said, glancing at Michael, who was watching me steadily. "I really won't." I hung up. The next morning my father called. His voice was different, not angry, cold, calculated. The tone he used when negotiations weren't going his way. "You've made a serious mistake, Carol." "Good morning, Dad." "This isn't a joke," he said sharply. "Do you understand what you've done to this family?" "I showed Grandma the truth," I replied. "If the truth damages the family, maybe the family was already broken." 15 years of stability, he snapped. 15 years of maintaining relationships, and you threw it all away because you're bitter about some photographs. Something inside me finally snapped. "Stability?" I laughed without humor. "You call erasing your daughter from every family photo stability? Intercepting her grandmother's letters for 15 years? That's not stability, Dad. That's cruelty." "You don't understand the pressures we were under." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You needed the perfect image, and I didn't fit the frame." Silence stretched between us. Then his voice softened, almost conciliatory. "Eleanor left you a significant portion. If you were willing to speak to her, convince her to reconsider, we could work something out, split the difference." I let his words hang in the air. "You're trying to negotiate with me right now." "I'm trying to be reasonable." "No," I said evenly. "You're trying to buy my cooperation, just like you tried to use me as a prop to get her signature. Carol, I'm done, I said. Don't call me again. If you hang up, that's it, he warned. We're finished. I thought about 15 years of empty spaces, of letters that never arrived, of a grandmother who slowly broke, believing I'd abandoned her. Dad, I said quietly, we were finished a long time ago. You just never noticed. I ended the call. A week later, Aunt Ruth called with updates. It's chaos over there, she said. She didn't sound pleased, but she didn't sound sad either. Diane hasn't stopped crying. Richard's been calling Eleanor's lawyer trying to contest the changes. Can he? No. Eleanor was evaluated last month, completely lucid. Her decisions stand. I poured myself a cup of coffee, trying to absorb the weight of it all. How much did she change? Diane and Emily went from about 40% each to around 15% combined. Richard gets nothing. He's not blood. The rest goes to you and me. Ruth paused. Eleanor said this isn't about punishment. It's about acknowledging who actually loved her. I thought about the letters, the years of silence, the grandmother I'd lost, and then found again. What about the community? I asked. Do people know? Ruth sighed. Eleanor sent letters to several old friends as well, explaining everything. She included copies of a few Christmas cards, along with her own letters that had been returned unopened. My mom must be mortified, I said. She is, Ruth replied. Apparently someone at church asked Richard if it was true they'd hidden their own daughter from the family. He didn't have an answer. Something unfamiliar settled in my chest. Not satisfaction, something more complicated. I never wanted to humiliate them, I said quietly. I just wanted Grandma to know the truth. I know, Ruth said gently. But sometimes the truth has consequences. They built their image on a lie. When the lie collapsed, so did the image. How's Emily taking it? She tried to call Eleanor to apologize. Eleanor refused to speak to her. A brief pause. She said the only granddaughter she wants to talk to is you. Christmas arrived 3 weeks later. Michael and I spent Christmas Eve with Aunt Ruth, cooking dinner and watching old movies. It was simple, quiet, perfect. On Christmas morning, I found a card in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mrs. Patterson, my parents' neighbor for 20 years. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was this year's Danvers family Christmas card. I studied it for a long time. There they were, my mom, my dad, and Emily, standing in front of a decorated tree. But something was different. Their smiles looked strained. My dad's jaw was tight. My mom's eyes looked puffy, even through professional editing. Emily stood slightly apart, her arms crossed. There was no cheerful caption, no happy holidays from the Danvers, just a simple season's greetings in impersonal script. And there was no empty space where I should have been. They stood close together, 3 people trying to look like a complete unit. But the composition felt off, unbalanced, like something missing they couldn't quite hide. What is it? Michael asked, coming up behind me with a cup of coffee. I handed him the card. Huh, he said, tilting his head. They look miserable. They do, I said, setting it down. Does that make you happy? I thought about it honestly. No, it makes me sad. Just not for me anymore. For them. Michael slipped an arm around my shoulders. 15 years ago, they cut you out of their picture. Now they can't cut out the empty space you left behind. I leaned into him. They'd tried so hard to erase me. And now, even in their photos, my absence spoke louder than my presence ever had. On December 27th, we drove to the hospice facility. Grandma Eleanor was waiting in her room, wrapped in a soft blue cardigan despite the warmth. The album sat on her nightstand. She hadn't let it out of her sight since Ruth brought it. My family, she said when we walked in. Ruth had arrived earlier and stood by the window, smiling as Michael and I approached. Let me get a picture, Ruth said, pulling out her phone. A real family photo. Grandma reached for my hand. I knelt beside her wheelchair while Michael stood behind us, his hand warm on my shoulder. Ruth lifted her phone and took the picture. I heard the click, and for the first time in years I smiled. A real smile. "This," Grandma said, studying the screen, "is what family looks like. Imperfect, real, made of people who actually love each other." She slipped her hand into the pocket of her cardigan and pressed something into my palm. A small envelope, my name written in her shaky script. "Open it," she urged. Inside was an old photograph, its edges yellowed with time. A woman in a hospital bed, exhausted but glowing, cradling a newborn. Grandma holding me the day I was born. I turned it over. "Carol, the light of my life. The moment I held you, I knew you were special." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "You kept this," I whispered. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "They tried to make you invisible, sweetheart, but you were never invisible to me." We stayed until evening, talking about everything and nothing. Michael made her laugh. Ruth shared stories from her childhood. I held my grandmother's hand and memorized every line of her face. It would be our last Christmas together, but it was also our first real one. Grandma Eleanor passed away on March 3rd, peacefully, Ruth said, in her sleep. The photograph of her holding me as a newborn was clutched in her hands. The funeral was held on a cold Tuesday. Gray skies, light rain. Weather that matched grief. I sat in the front row with Ruth and Michael. My parents and Emily sat on the opposite side of the aisle. We didn't speak. We didn't even make eye contact. The service was simple, just as Eleanor had requested. No long eulogies, only readings from her favorite poems and hymns from her church choir. Afterward, at the reception, Emily approached me. "Carol," she said. "She looks smaller somehow, less polished. Can we talk?" I studied her, searching for the cruelty I'd heard in her voice at the studio. All I saw was fear. "What do you want to say?" I asked. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, "for everything. The photos, the things I said. I didn't realize. I knew, but I didn't think." "You didn't think I was a real person," I said gently. "I was just in the way." Her silence answered me. "Emily," I continued, keeping my voice calm, "I forgive you. I really do." Relief washed over her face. "But forgiving you doesn't mean I want a relationship," I added. "It means I'm choosing peace for myself." Her expression fell. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I said. "I'm doing it because I spent 34 years trying to earn a place in a family that never wanted me. I'm done trying." I touched her arm briefly, a final gesture. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but you won't find it through me." A month after the funeral, the estate was settled. Grandma left me the brownstone in the Hudson Valley, the one filled with books, photographs, and memories of a woman I barely knew, but always loved. Ruth received the same. My parents and Emily split a modest amount, enough to live comfortably, far less than they'd expected. But the money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the box. It arrived at my apartment one April morning, a wooden chest Ruth had found while clearing out the brownstone. Inside were decades of photographs, Eleanor's entire life, captured in fading color and crisp black and white. I spread them across the dining table. Michael stood beside me as we sifted through history. That's when I found it. A family photo from 1965. Eleanor's family, her parents, her siblings, gathered for a holiday. And there, at the edge of the frame, slightly apart from everyone else, stood a 16-year-old girl with dark hair and uncertain eyes. My grandmother, outside the family circle, just like me. I turned the photo over. Someone had written a note in old ink. "Eleanor, the difficult one, always causing problems." My breath caught. "She was like me," I said, showing Michael. "They pushed her aside too." And suddenly, I understood. My mother, raised by a woman who had been dismissed and diminished, had learned only how to dismiss and diminish in return. The cycle continued because no one ever broke it. Until now. I looked again at the photo of teenage Eleanor, isolated, unsure, longing to belong. The cycle ends with me, I said quietly. Michael squeezed my hand. When we have kids someday, they'll know they're loved. They'll be in every photo, every story. I nodded. I won't let history repeat itself. It's been 8 months since the Christmas photo shoot I walked away from. I'm sitting now in Grandma's brownstone, my brownstone, watching autumn leaves fall outside the window. Michael is in the kitchen making coffee. The walls are covered with photos now. Our photos, friends, chosen family, moments that matter. And in a silver frame above the fireplace is the picture from the hospice. Ruth, Michael, Grandma Eleanor, and me. A real family. Imperfect, but ours. Sometimes I think about those Christmas cards, 15 years of smiling faces that didn't include mine. For a long time, I believed that being left out meant I didn't matter. I was wrong. I mattered. I always did. The only thing missing was people who could see it. My parents haven't contacted me since the funeral. Neither has Emily. The silence used to hurt. Now it feels like peace. Because here's what I've learned. You can't force people to love you. You can't perform your way into a family that's already decided you don't belong. But you absolutely can, build a new family. One rooted in truth instead of image, in presence instead of perfection. They erased me from their photos, but they couldn't erase me from my own story. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible, in your family, at work, anywhere in your life, I want you to hear this. You are not the problem. Their inability to see you is not a reflection of your worth. One day you'll find people who see you clearly, who make space for you, who never ask you to disappear. That's my story. Now I want to hear yours. Have you ever felt erased by your own family? You're not alone, you never were. Thank you for staying with me until the end. It tells me you want more stories like this. Check the description for similar stories you might love. Where are you watching from? And what would you have done in my place? See you in the next videos. Thank